Have you ever made a financial decision at midnight that you regretted by morning? If you're over 60, that impulsive choice might haunt you far longer than you think. The truth is, at this stage of life, a single emotional decision can unravel decades of careful planning in ways that simply cannot be undone. I know this feeling intimately because I've watched it destroy the retirement dreams of people I care about. There's something uniquely painful about watching a friend who worked 30 years make one emotionally driven investment decision that erases everything they built. What makes it even more devastating is that it's almost always preventable. These aren't stupid people making obviously terrible choices. They're intelligent, accomplished individuals who let their emotions override a simple filter that could have saved them. Here's what nobody tells you about turning 60. Your relationship with money needs to fundamentally change, but the world around you is designed to keep you playing the same game you played at 40. The financial media floods your feed with stories of people half your age turning cryptocurrency into millions or catching the next tech boom. Your neighbor casually mentions at dinner that their portfolio jumped 40% last year. Suddenly, your steady, sensible approach feels inadequate, maybe even foolish. Has this ever happened to you? That gnawing sense that you're being left behind while everyone else seems to have figured out some secret you missed? The pressure intensifies because you know something younger investors don't yet understand. You're running out of runway. At 30, you can recover from almost any financial mistake given enough time. At 60, time is the one asset you can no longer buy. This creates a dangerous emotional cocktail, urgency mixed with inadequacy, seasoned with fear that you haven't done enough. It's in this vulnerable state that we make the worst decisions of our financial lives. But before we begin, please hit the like button and let me know where in the world you're watching from today. It's always fascinating seeing who's joining us from around the world. And if you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any of our future videos. What you're about to discover might surprise you because it goes against almost everything the financial industry wants you to believe. The most important financial decision after 60 isn't about finding the next big opportunity or maximizing returns or catching up to where you think you should be. It's about something far more fundamental, something that requires less intelligence and more discipline than you might imagine. Stay with me until the end of this video because I'm going to share a simple decision-making filter that has protected countless people from financial catastrophe during their most vulnerable years. This filter isn't complicated. In fact, its power lies in its simplicity. But applying it consistently requires understanding why your emotions after 60 are fundamentally different from what they were at 40. And why that difference demands a completely new approach to every financial choice you make. The question isn't whether you'll face emotional pressure to make risky decisions. You will. The question is whether you'll have the right filter in place when that pressure comes. Let me share something vulnerable with you. There's a specific kind of insomnia that haunts people over 60, and it has nothing to do with physical discomfort. It's that 2 a.m. glow of your phone screen as you scroll through yet another story about someone who turned $5,000 into $500,000 through some cryptocurrency you've never heard of. Your heart rate picks up slightly. That familiar knot forms in your stomach. You tell yourself you're just browsing, just staying informed, but the truth is something darker is happening. You're measuring your life's financial journey against someone else's highlight reel. And in that comparison, you're finding yourself lacking. This midnight anxiety isn't random. It's a warning signal your mind is sending you, a red flag that you're about to make a decision based on someone else's success rather than your own actual needs. The hidden truth behind this emotional state is that it has absolutely nothing to do with whether you have enough money. I've seen people with seven-figure retirement accounts experience the exact same, gnawing inadequacy as those with far less. The anxiety isn't about the numbers in your account, it's about the comparison you're making, and that comparison is poison. Here's the transformation that needs to happen in your mindset. You have to recognize that you're playing a completely different game now than the one those 30-year-olds on social media are playing. When you were young, you could afford to be aggressive, to take risks, to chase opportunities with uncertain outcomes. Time was your safety net. Make a mistake at 35 and you have 3 decades to course correct. But at 60, the mathematics change entirely. The game changes. The rules change. Yet the financial world keeps selling you the same aggressive strategies that made sense when you had time on your side. If this kind of straight talk about money after 60 resonates with you, I'd love to have you subscribe to the channel. We focus on real wisdom that actually protects your retirement, not the hype that sells newsletters. This is where most people after 60 make their critical error. They look at their remaining working years or their current retirement savings and feel this urgent pressure to catch up, to make up for lost time, to finally hit that big score that will put them where they think they should be. It's an emotional trap disguised as financial ambition. Behind the scenes of this thinking is usually comparison to a sibling who invested in Apple early, or a colleague whose pension is larger, or that neighbor with the new luxury car. You start believing you need to take bigger risks to compensate for perceived shortfalls, when in reality, you need to be moving in the opposite direction. The brutal reality is this: at 60, forgiveness disappears. When you were younger, the market forgave your mistakes because you had decades for recovery. Lose half your portfolio at 35 and you're wounded, but you'll survive. Lose half your portfolio at 65, and you may never recover your standard of living, ever. This isn't pessimism, it's mathematics. Your retirement timeline doesn't bend to accommodate your losses. Your healthcare costs won't wait while your portfolio rebounds. Your living expenses continue regardless of market conditions. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic because understanding why this happens is just as important as knowing that it happens. The transformation in how you approach every financial decision after 60 starts with one fundamental question that serves as your filter, your protection, your guide through every opportunity that crosses your path. Before you invest a single dollar in anything, before you chase any return, before you make any significant financial move, you need to ask yourself something that changes everything. Write in the comments, "Can I afford to be wrong?" if this resonates with your current financial journey. That question, "Can I afford to be wrong?" exposes something the financial industry desperately hopes you never discover. Behind the scenes of every advertisement, every newsletter, every hot tip from your broker, there's a simple truth. They make money when you make moves. The more you trade, the more you invest, the more you chase opportunities, the more fees they collect. Their entire business model depends on your activity, not your security. Think about that for a moment. The people giving you financial advice profit regardless of whether that advice protects you or destroys you. They win when you win, but they also win when you lose, as long as you keep playing the game. This is the hidden architecture of the financial world, and it's specifically designed to keep you emotionally engaged and constantly searching for the next opportunity. They feed you stories of spectacular returns because spectacular returns keep you interested, keep you invested, keep you moving money around. What you actually need at 60 is the exact opposite of what they're selling. You need protection from devastating losses, not dreams of spectacular gains. You need stability, not excitement. You need to preserve what you've built, not gamble it chasing what you haven't. But here's where it gets even more insidious. Society has programmed us from childhood to celebrate the risk-takers, the visionaries, the bold entrepreneurs who bet everything and won. We admire people who take chances. We look down on those who play it safe as timid or lacking ambition. This cultural programming runs so deep that even at 60, when defensive thinking should dominate every financial decision, we still feel this emotional pressure to be aggressive, to be bold, to take risks. We're afraid of being seen as someone who's given up or lost their edge. The transformation that needs to happen in your mindset is recognizing that this cultural messaging, which might have served you at 30, is actively dangerous at 60. The same aggressive approach that builds wealth in your younger years can absolutely destroy you in your later ones. It's not about being timid. It's about understanding that the game has fundamentally changed. You're no longer in the accumulation phase where offense makes sense. You're in the preservation phase where defense is everything. This shift from offense to defense feels emotionally uncomfortable because we've been conditioned to interpret it as defeat, as settling, as admitting we're no longer in the game. The revelation that changes everything is understanding that this pivot isn't about giving up ambition. It's about redirecting that ambition towards something far more important, making sure you never have to worry about money running out. The question that serves as your filter here cuts through all the emotional noise. Does this opportunity build on what I already have, or does it put what I've built at risk? Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic because there's a specific type of loss that happens after 60 that most people never see coming, and it has nothing to do with market crashes or bad investments. It's about something far more personal, something that happens inside your own mind when you refuse to make this crucial shift from accumulation to preservation. Type defense wins in the comments if you're ready to embrace this transformation in your financial thinking. The loss I'm talking about isn't measured in dollars. It's measured in peace of mind, in sleep, in the quiet confidence that should come with decades of life experience. What happens when you refuse to embrace survival as your primary strategy is that you trap yourself in a perpetual state of anxiety, always chasing, always feeling behind, always convinced that the next move will finally put you where you need to be. The revelation that transforms everything is understanding that sometimes the most powerful action you can take is deliberate inaction. This sounds absurd in our culture that worships activity and hustle. We're conditioned to believe that doing something is always better than doing nothing, that action equals progress. But after 60, this belief becomes dangerous. The hidden truth is that while everyone else frantically tries to beat the market, jumping from one opportunity to another, burning energy and taking risks, the real power lies in simply outlasting the chaos. Markets reward patience more reliably than they reward brilliance. Time in the market beats timing the market, but only if you can resist the emotional urge to constantly do something. Behind the scenes of this urge to act is usually fear disguised as ambition. You look at your retirement account and compare it to what some financial magazine says you should have at your age. Maybe you're supposed to have $1 million saved and you have 600,000, or maybe you have 2 million but your neighbor has 3. The specific numbers don't matter because the emotional impact is identical. You feel inadequate. You feel behind. This crushing sense of not measuring up creates what I call the midlife financial panic, and it's one of the most dangerous emotional states you can experience after 60. This panic manufactures urgency where none actually exists. Your actual financial needs haven't changed. Your lifestyle requirements are the same today as they were yesterday, but suddenly you feel this burning pressure to do something, anything, to close the gap between where you are and where you think you should be. The transformation in your thinking has to start with recognizing this urgency for what it really is. Manufactured anxiety based on comparison, not genuine need based on reality. Here's what makes this so devastating. Markets have an almost supernatural ability to detect and punish desperation. When you need results quickly, when you're making decisions from a position of fear rather than strength, the market takes everything. It's ruthlessly efficient at separating desperate people from their money. I've watched this pattern repeat itself with heartbreaking consistency. Someone at 62 panics about their retirement savings, makes an aggressive move to catch up quickly, and loses more in 6 months than they accumulated in the previous 5 years. The filter you need to apply before every single financial decision at this stage of life is brutally simple, but emotionally difficult. Am I making this choice from a position of strength, or am I acting out of desperation? Strength means you can afford to wait, to be patient, to let opportunities pass. Desperation means you feel compelled to act now, to chase returns, to take risks you wouldn't normally take. The journey from desperation to strength doesn't require more money. It requires a fundamental shift in how you measure success and evaluate urgency. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic because there's a specific emotional poison that drives more bad decisions after 60 than almost anything else. And it's something we rarely talk about openly. Comment position of strength if you're committed to filtering your decisions through this lens. That emotional poison is envy, and it's probably destroying your financial future right now without you even realizing it. Here's the brutal truth that took me decades to understand. People rarely go broke because they can't earn enough money. They go broke because they can't stand watching someone else earn more. This insight cuts to the heart of almost every financial disaster I've witnessed among people over 60. Behind the scenes of the bad investments, the risky ventures, the desperate moves, there's almost always comparison driving the decision. What makes envy particularly destructive at this stage of life is its unique emptiness. Think about other financial mistakes. At least with greed or extravagance, you enjoy some temporary pleasure before facing the consequences. You buy the luxury car, you take the expensive vacation, you experience something before the regret sets in. But with envy, you get absolutely nothing except resentment. You marinate in this toxic comparison, feeling worse about your own situation while making increasingly poor decisions to keep pace with others. It's pure downside with zero upside, and yet it drives more financial catastrophes than almost any other emotion. If something I shared today shifted your perspective even slightly, a quick like helps other people who need this message find their way here. The transformation that needs to happen is recognizing when envy is influencing your decisions. Your brother-in-law mentions his investment portfolio grew 30% last year, and suddenly your perfectly adequate returns feel insufficient. A former colleague posts on social media about their retirement lifestyle, and you start questioning whether you've saved enough, even though your needs haven't changed. A neighbor buys a new car, and you feel this irrational pressure to demonstrate your own financial success. None of these comparisons have anything to do with your actual financial reality, your actual needs, your actual security. They're entirely about matching or exceeding someone else's perceived success. The hidden truth behind this comparison trap is that you're almost always comparing your complete reality to someone else's highlight reel. You see their new investment gains, but not their losses. You see their retirement spending, but not their debt. You see their confidence, but not their anxiety. The journey toward financial peace after 60 requires breaking free from this toxic pattern entirely. Your financial timeline is yours alone. Your risk tolerance, your goals, your starting point, your obligations, your dreams are all unique to you. The day you truly internalize this, the day you stop measuring your success against others, is the day your real security begins. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic because there's a specific behavior pattern that stems directly from comparison, and it's responsible for some of the most devastating losses people experience after 60. This pattern is so common, so universal, that you've almost certainly done it yourself without realizing the damage it causes. Write "my own path" in the comments if you're ready to stop comparing your journey to others and focus on your unique financial reality. The behavior pattern I'm talking about is this: selling your winners too early while holding on to your losers too long. This might sound technical, but the emotional driver behind it is pure comparison and ego protection. When you have an investment that's doing well, you feel this overwhelming urge to lock in the profit, to capture that win, to have something concrete to show, partly because it feels safe, but partly because you want to be able to tell someone about your smart decision. You want proof that you know what you're doing, so you sell, take your modest gain, and move on. But when you have an investment that's losing money, you hold on to it stubbornly, hoping it will recover, because selling would mean admitting you were wrong. The hidden truth here is that your ego is making your financial decisions, and your ego doesn't care about your security. It cares about being right, about looking smart, about avoiding the embarrassment of a mistake. The transformation that needs to happen is freeing yourself from needing to prove anything to anyone. The question that serves as your filter becomes almost liberating. Would I make this exact same choice if no one ever knew about it? This freedom from comparison opens up an entirely different way of evaluating every opportunity that crosses your path. Suddenly, you're not asking whether this investment will give you bragging rights at dinner parties. You're asking whether it genuinely serves your specific situation. You're not worried about matching your neighbor's returns. You're focused on protecting what you've built while allowing steady growth. The revelation is that rational analysis can only happen when competitive instinct gets removed from the equation. Let me share a story that illustrates how devastating comparison can be. I know someone who spent 30 years building a perfectly adequate retirement portfolio through steady, boring investments. Nothing flashy, but it was working. Then he joined an exclusive club where members regularly discussed their speculative investments over drinks. Within months, I watched his entire approach crumble. The atmosphere was intoxicating. Everyone had stories of massive returns, insider deals, cryptocurrency windfalls. He began feeling embarrassed by his conventional strategy. The psychological weight of comparison crushed his previously sound judgment. Within 2 years, he had moved significant portions of his savings into high-risk ventures he barely understood. The outcome was devastating. Losses that couldn't be recovered in his remaining working years. This transformation didn't happen overnight. It was gradual, almost imperceptible. Each decision seemed reasonable in isolation. But behind the scenes, every choice was driven by the emotional need to keep pace with the stories he was hearing, not by what his actual situation required. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic because there's a specific type of investment pressure that targets people over 60 with surgical precision, and understanding how to recognize it might be the most valuable thing you take away from this entire conversation. Type "facts over stories" in the comments if you're committed to filtering out emotional narratives and focusing on your actual financial reality. The investment pressure I'm talking about is something you've probably encountered without recognizing it for what it really is. It comes disguised as opportunity, usually introduced by someone you trust, often in a social setting where declining feels awkward. Maybe it's at a dinner party where someone casually mentions an exclusive investment opportunity. Maybe it's a former colleague who reached out specifically to share this amazing deal. Maybe it's a family member who's already in and wants you to benefit too. The presentation always follows the same pattern: sophisticated enough to sound legitimate, exclusive enough to feel special, urgent enough to prevent careful analysis. Behind the scenes of these opportunities is usually someone who benefits from your participation, though that's rarely mentioned up front. The transformation in your thinking needs to start with recognizing that truly good investments don't require social pressure to attract capital. They don't need urgency. They don't depend on your inability to verify claims. The filter that protects you here is deceptively simple. Do I truly understand every aspect of this, or am I being carried along by someone else's enthusiasm? What makes this particularly dangerous after 60 is that you often lack the time to research properly before the opportunity supposedly disappears. The pressure is intentional, the urgency is manufactured, the social dynamics are weaponized against your better judgment. You don't want to offend the person presenting the opportunity. You don't want to appear unsophisticated by asking basic questions. You don't want to miss out if this really is as good as they claim. These emotional pressures override the rational analysis that would normally protect you. The hidden truth is that successful investors develop an almost supernatural immunity to social pressure. They can sit at a dinner party, listen to everyone discuss their latest investment conquests, and feel absolutely no compulsion to participate. They've internalized something crucial. Other people's financial decisions have nothing to do with their own situation. The journey toward this immunity requires conscious practice. You have to actively resist the urge to match, to compete, to keep pace. You have to become comfortable being the person who passes on opportunities that everyone else seems excited about. Here's what most people never realize until it's too late. Those who make catastrophic financial mistakes after 60 almost never do so in isolation. There's always social influence behind the scenes, always someone whose opinion they valued, whose success they envied, whose approval they sought. The mathematics of these disasters are consistent, but the emotional drivers are even more consistent. Remove the social pressure, remove the comparison, remove the fear of missing out, and suddenly the terrible investment that seemed so compelling becomes obviously questionable. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic because there's a fundamental principle about how you should approach every investment decision after 60, and it goes against almost everything you've been taught about building wealth. Comment I understand it if you're committed to never investing in anything you can't fully explain to someone else. The principle I'm talking about is patience, but not the passive kind. This is active, disciplined patience that goes against every instinct your brain developed over millions of years of evolution. Your mind is hardwired to seek certainty, to lock in gains, to avoid risk once you're ahead. When you have an investment that's performing well, every upward tick creates more anxiety, not less. You start thinking about all the ways this could reverse. You imagine the profit disappearing. The emotional pressure to sell and secure that gain becomes almost unbearable. Meanwhile, that investment that's down 20%, you hold onto it with stubborn hope because selling would force you to confront the loss. As long as you don't sell, you can tell yourself it's just a temporary dip, that it will recover, that you haven't really lost anything yet. The hidden truth behind this pattern is that hope and fear are making your decisions, not mathematics. Hope keeps you in bad positions. Fear pulls you out of good ones. The transformation that needs to happen is recognizing these emotional drivers and deliberately acting against them. Here's something that might shock you. If you went back through your investment history over the past decade and simply reversed your instincts, holding your winners longer and cutting your losers faster, your portfolio would likely be worth 2 or 3 times what it actually is. That's not an exaggeration. The mathematical impact of this emotional pattern is devastating, yet almost nobody talks about it because it's so uncomfortable to confront. Behind the scenes of every successful long-term investor is this counterintuitive discipline, the ability to let winners run even when it feels increasingly risky, and the willingness to admit mistakes quickly rather than hoping they'll reverse. What makes this particularly crucial after 60 is that you simply don't have Time to recover from these emotional errors. When you're young, you can make this mistake repeatedly and still come out ahead through sheer time in the market. But at 60, every time you sell a winner too early or hold a loser too long, you're compounding the impact of limited time. The journey toward breaking this pattern starts with brutal honesty about what's driving each decision. Before you make any move, you have to ask yourself, is this based on evidence and analysis, or is this my fear? Trying to feel safe. The revelation that transforms everything is understanding that the discomfort you feel when holding a winner is actually a signal that you're doing something right. Success in investing after 60 feels wrong because it requires acting against instinct. It requires letting go of the need for certainty and embracing calculated patience instead. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic because there's a specific piece of wisdom that changed how I approach every single day in the market, and it has nothing to do with picking stocks or timing trades. Type evidence over emotion in the comments if you're ready to start filtering your investment decisions through facts rather than feelings. The wisdom I'm talking about is almost absurdly simple, yet incredibly difficult to practice. It's this: sit still and do nothing. That's it. When markets drop, when news breaks, when everyone around you is making moves, your job is to sit on your assets and resist the overwhelming urge to take action. The emotional discipline required for this is immense because every fiber of your being screams that doing something must be better than doing nothing. We're culturally programmed to equate activity with progress, to believe that taking control means taking action. But here's the hidden truth that transforms everything. After 60, your greatest competitive advantage isn't being smarter than other investors or having better information or timing the market perfectly. Your advantage is simply being able to sit still when everyone else is panicking. The financial media exists to make you feel like you need to constantly adjust your portfolio. Elections happen, economic data releases, policy changes, market corrections. Each event gets presented as if it requires immediate response, as if your inaction will cost you dearly. Behind the scenes of this manufactured urgency is a simple reality. Good businesses survive these disturbances. Great businesses actually thrive through them. The transformation in your thinking needs to be recognizing that most market noise has zero impact on your long-term security. The filter that protects you becomes almost liberating. Does this situation actually require action, or am I just uncomfortable with the uncertainty of doing nothing? What makes this particularly powerful after 60 is that patience costs nothing but pays enormous dividends. You're not expending energy, not taking risks, not incurring transaction costs, not making emotional decisions you'll regret. You're simply allowing time to work in your favor. The journey toward this discipline requires unlearning decades of conditioning that told you successful people are always in motion, always optimizing, always seeking the edge. Now here's where this gets even more important. This ability to sit still connects directly to another crucial revelation: knowing what you don't know. The world has become impossibly complex. Technology, markets, geopolitics, regulations, innovations, all moving at speeds that make comprehensive understanding virtually impossible. Yet most people feel compelled to have opinions about everything, to participate in every trend, to understand every opportunity. This pressure to be knowledgeable about everything is dangerous because it leads you into areas where your ignorance can cost you dearly. The transformation that needs to happen is embracing intellectual humility as a protective shield. You don't need to understand cryptocurrency to be financially secure. You don't need opinions about emerging markets or artificial intelligence or whatever the next hot sector becomes. The hidden truth is that you get wealthy not by being a know-it-all, but by staying strictly within what you genuinely understand and avoiding everything else. The filter becomes almost freeing. Do I understand this well enough that I could explain it clearly to someone with no background in the subject? Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic because there's a specific type of opportunity that preys on people's fear of admitting ignorance and learning to recognize it might save your retirement. Write, "I know my limits" in the comments if you're committed to staying within your circle of understanding rather than chasing what you don't comprehend. The opportunity that preys on your reluctance to admit ignorance usually comes wrapped in complexity that sounds impressive. Someone presents an investment strategy involving derivatives or blockchain technology or algorithmic trading or international tax structures. They use terminology that feels just familiar enough that you're embarrassed to say you don't actually understand it. The presentation assumes a baseline of knowledge you don't possess, and rather than interrupt to ask basic questions, you nod along. Behind the scenes of this dynamic is a calculated strategy. Complexity creates the illusion of sophistication, and sophistication intimidates people into silence. The transformation that protects you is developing comfort with those three powerful words: I don't know. When someone presents an opportunity and you don't fully understand how it makes money, how it manages risk, or how it would perform in different scenarios, your response needs to be immediate and unapologetic. I don't know, therefore I'm not participating. This sounds simple, but the emotional resistance to saying these words is enormous. We've spent our entire lives building expertise, establishing credibility, proving competence. Admitting ignorance feels like erasing all that accomplishment. But here's the hidden truth that changes everything. Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger built one of history's greatest fortunes primarily by saying no. They passed on the tech boom. They avoided cryptocurrency. They sat out countless opportunities that other investors rushed into. They missed nothing important because they understood something crucial. You don't get rich by participating in everything. You get rich by only participating in what you thoroughly understand and avoiding everything else. The revelation is that selective expertise beats scattered superficial knowledge every single time. What makes this particularly vital after 60 is that your margin for error has narrowed to almost nothing. When you were younger, you could afford to learn expensive lessons. You could venture into new areas, make mistakes, recover, and move forward. But at 60, every dollar you lose to something you didn't understand is a dollar you'll likely never recover. The journey toward financial security at this stage requires drawing clear boundaries around your knowledge and defending those boundaries religiously. The filter that protects you is almost uncomfortable in its directness. Would I bet my entire retirement on how well I understand this? Not just a portion of your savings, your entire retirement. If the honest answer is no, then that investment belongs outside your circle, regardless of how lucrative it appears or how many other people are participating. The emotional discomfort of admitting these limitations is actually your shield. It prevents you from wandering into dangerous territory, disguised as opportunity. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic because there's a fundamental shift in thinking that needs to happen after 60, one that most people resist because it feels like giving up ambition when in reality, it's the smartest strategic pivot you can make. Comment, no is protection if you recognize that your ability to decline opportunities you don't understand is actually your greatest financial asset. The shift I'm talking about is moving from employee thinking to owner thinking, and it's one of the most difficult mental transitions you'll ever make. Most people spend their entire careers optimizing for the wrong metrics. They chase promotions, prestigious titles, corner offices, impressive business cards. They measure success by their position on the organizational chart or their professional reputation. The hidden truth behind this pattern is that none of it compounds. A vice president title doesn't grow in value while you sleep. Recognition in your industry doesn't generate passive income. Professional respect doesn't pay your bills in retirement. What compounds is ownership. Owning businesses, real estate, dividend-paying stocks, assets that continue producing value. Whether you're actively working or not, the transformation that needs to happen after 60 is recognizing that your most valuable hours are behind you. Your energy isn't infinite. Your health won't cooperate forever. The marathon of exchanging time for money has a finish line, and you're approaching it whether you acknowledge it or not. Behind the scenes of every comfortable retirement is this fundamental shift from selling your time to owning your time. Here's what makes this so emotionally difficult. Your entire identity is likely wrapped up in your professional accomplishments. You've spent decades building expertise, establishing reputation, proving your value in the marketplace. The idea of stepping back from active work feels like losing yourself, like becoming irrelevant. This emotional resistance keeps highly successful professionals trapped in a cycle that can't sustain them indefinitely. They keep working because they can't imagine not working, because their sense of worth is tied to their productivity. But the filter you need to apply to every financial decision after 60 cuts through this identity crisis. Does this make me money when I'm not working? If you're considering starting a consulting business, that question exposes the truth. Consulting requires your ongoing time and energy. It's just employment under another name. If you're looking at rental property or dividend stocks or a business with competent management that doesn't need your daily involvement, those assets work independently of your hours. The journey toward real financial security requires confronting an uncomfortable reality. You're not building a career anymore. You're building a foundation that will support you when you can no longer trade hours for dollars. The emotional weight of this realization can be heavy because it forces you to acknowledge limitations you've spent your life refusing to accept. Your energy will decline. Your desire to work will fade. Health issues will emerge. These aren't pessimistic predictions. They're mathematical certainties that your financial strategy must account for. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic because there's a specific question that exposes whether you're truly building security or just creating another job for yourself, and the answer determines your entire financial future. Write assets over income in the comments if you're ready to prioritize ownership over ongoing work in your financial planning. That question, which exposes everything, is deceptively simple. Do I own anything that works for me when I'm not working? This cuts through all the complexity, all the financial jargon, all the impressive presentations, and reveals the fundamental truth about what you're actually building. When you examine your portfolio through this lens, you start seeing the difference between accumulating financial instruments and building genuine ownership. Are you collecting things that require your constant attention, or do you possess assets that generate value independently? The transformation this question creates is profound because it forces you to confront whether you're building security or just extending your career under different names. Real estate that produces steady rental income works for you around the clock. Quality dividend-paying stocks continue earning whether you're awake or asleep. A business with competent management that doesn't need your daily involvement operates independently of your energy. These are ownership positions. Everything else is just sophisticated employment. What makes this distinction even more critical is how owners and employees respond completely differently to market volatility. When markets decline, the employee mindset panics. You see your retirement account drop and immediately want to do something, anything, to stop the bleeding. The emotional response is pure fear because you're thinking about your nest egg shrinking, about your security disappearing. But the owner mindset sees the exact same decline and thinks about opportunity. Owners recognize that quality assets are temporarily on sale, that downturns create buying opportunities if you have the discipline to act against the crowd. Behind the scenes of this difference is a fundamental understanding about economic cycles that most people refuse to accept. You simply cannot count on good times lasting forever. Throughout history, economies have swung between prosperity and crisis with reliable consistency. If you live long enough, you'll experience multiple downturns, probably several severe ones. Yet our modern culture operates under this dangerous delusion that permanent prosperity is the default state, that growth is inevitable, that markets only go up over time. The hidden truth that transforms your entire approach after 60 is recognizing that your timeline for recovery has compressed to almost nothing. You don't have 20 years to wait out a market collapse. You don't have decades to rebuild from poor decisions. Every investment you make needs to be filtered through this brutal question. Can this survive bad times, or does it only work when everything is going well? If your strategy depends on continued economic expansion, rising markets, low interest rates, or any other specific conditions, you're building on sand. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic because there's one financial danger that destroys more retirements than market crashes, and it's something you have complete control over if you recognize it for what it is. Type "built to survive" in the comments if you're committed to constructing a portfolio that can weather any economic storm rather than one that only works during good times. The danger I'm talking about is debt, and it kills more retirements than any market crash ever could. Here's the mathematical certainty that changes everything. With no debt, you can survive bad times. With debt, bad times destroy you. This isn't dramatic language, it's arithmetic. When economic downturns hit, when markets collapse, when unexpected expenses emerge, the people who weather these storms are those without financial obligations hanging over their heads. They might suffer paper losses, their portfolios might decline, but their foundation remains solid because they're not forced to make decisions under pressure. But those carrying debt, they face an entirely different reality. Monthly obligations continue, regardless of market conditions. Mortgage payments don't pause during recessions. Loan requirements don't adjust when your portfolio drops. The hidden truth behind every major financial crisis is this pattern. Those with minimal debt emerge wounded but intact, while those highly leveraged often lose everything, including assets they spent decades building. Behind the scenes of the 2008 housing collapse, the dot-com crash, every major downturn, you find this same storyline repeating with devastating consistency. What makes debt particularly catastrophic after 60 is the compression of your recovery window. A 35-year-old with steady income can potentially rebuild from financial disaster. There's time for career advancement, for portfolio recovery, for course correction. But at 60, that pathway narrows to almost nothing or disappears entirely. You don't have 20 years to dig yourself out. You don't have decades of earning potential ahead. The transformation that needs to happen is recognizing that debt at this stage isn't a tool for building wealth. It's a vulnerability that can destroy everything you've worked for. The emotional appeal of leverage is powerful because we've been taught that smart money uses other people's money to build wealth. That philosophy might work when you're young with time to recover from mistakes. But after 60, the risk-reward equation flips completely. The potential upside of leverage rarely justifies the catastrophic downside it creates. Every monthly payment reduces your flexibility. Every obligation narrows your options. Every debt increases the probability that a bad situation becomes an unrecoverable disaster. The filter that protects you here requires brutal honesty. Can I survive if everything goes wrong? Not just if one thing goes wrong, but if multiple things go wrong simultaneously. Markets crash while you have unexpected medical expenses while your income drops. This isn't pessimism, it's planning. For reality, if your financial structure can't survive that scenario without debt, you're building on a foundation that will crumble under pressure. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic because there's a three-part framework that creates an impenetrable shield around your retirement security, and debt is only the first element. Comment: debt-free mindset. If you're committed to eliminating financial obligations rather than accumulating them after 60, the framework I'm talking about distills decades of financial wisdom into three simple words: avoid debt, avoid drama, avoid dumb people. This trinity creates a protective shield around your retirement that becomes more valuable with each passing year. We've discussed debt, but the other two elements are equally crucial and often overlooked because they don't show up on balance sheets. Drama is the constant emotional turbulence that comes from obsessing over market movements, chasing trends, or allowing financial media to dictate your emotional state. It's exhausting, and after 60, that exhaustion isn't just uncomfortable, it's dangerous. Behind the scenes of every poor financial decision is usually emotional depletion. When you've spent your energy worrying about daily market fluctuations, reading every article about economic predictions, or anxiously checking your portfolio multiple times a day, you have nothing left for the clear thinking that actually matters. The hidden truth is that drama wastes the most precious resource you have at this stage of life, which isn't money. It's mental energy, your capacity for rational analysis, for patient deliberation, for resisting emotional pressure. All of this depends on energy reserves that are fundamentally limited after 60. The transformation that needs to happen is recognizing when something is extracting more emotional energy than it's worth. That investment opportunity that keeps you up at night analyzing scenarios, that's drama. The market timing strategy that has you constantly adjusting positions based on news cycles, drama. The financial advisor who creates urgency around every decision, drama. The filter becomes almost liberating. Is this worth the emotional energy it's demanding? If you're spending more energy managing something than it's contributing to your security, you're paying a drama tax that's bankrupting your peace of mind. Now, the third element of this avoidance strategy might seem harsh, but it's absolutely critical. You need to avoid dumb people, and I don't mean intellectual capacity. I'm talking about people who are reckless, dishonest, unreliable, or addicted to shortcuts. What makes these individuals truly dangerous isn't just their poor judgment. It's how that poor judgment spreads like radiation to everyone in their orbit. Their financial decisions contaminate your carefully constructed plans through social pressure, through partnership opportunities that seem legitimate, through influence that operates below your conscious awareness. The journey toward protecting yourself requires becoming selective about whose financial advice you listen to and whose opportunities you consider. The filter here is uncomfortably direct. Do I trust this person with my financial future? Not do I like them, not are they successful in other areas, but would I stake my retirement security on their judgment and integrity? If the answer isn't an unqualified yes, then their influence needs to be removed from your decision-making process entirely. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic because underneath all these strategies, underneath every filter and framework, there's one foundational truth that determines whether any of this actually works. Type energy is precious in the comments if you recognize that protecting your mental energy is just as important as protecting your capital after 60. That foundational truth, the one that makes everything else possible or impossible, is brutally simple. If you're not spending less than you earn, absolutely nobody can help you. Not the smartest financial advisor, not the best investment strategy, not any framework or filter I've shared with you today. The mathematics are unforgiving. When more money flows out than flows in, the outcome is guaranteed regardless of how much you make. I've watched people earning $500,000 annually end up broke in retirement because they couldn't resist spending everything they made, while others with far more modest incomes built genuine security through this single discipline. This isn't about deprivation or sacrifice, it's about alignment. Does your spending reflect your true priorities, or are you emotionally justifying short-term desires that undermine long-term security? That's the ultimate filter, the foundation beneath everything we've discussed. Because without this discipline, every other strategy becomes meaningless. With it, even modest resources can create lasting financial dignity. If you made it this far, you're clearly serious about making better financial decisions after 60. This kind of content, focused on substance over hype and wisdom over trends, is what I'm committed to sharing here. If that resonates with you, I'd be grateful if you subscribe to the channel. We're building a community of thoughtful people who value protection over speculation, patience over panic. Leave a comment saying financial dignity, so I know you stayed until the end. I read every single one, and it helps me understand what's connecting with you. And if this perspective made you think differently about even one decision you're facing, a simple like helps others discover these ideas too. There's a video right here that explores exactly how to construct a portfolio designed specifically for the realities we've discussed today. Click and continue with me over there, because what you've learned here is just the beginning of building real security.